Welcome to Ex Machina. Join us as we explore the mysteries of this world. Cryptids, monsters, macabre tales, and horror stories abound. Could they be true? Are monsters real?
Good evening, folks, and thank you for joining us on another edition of Ex Machina. In the house tonight is me and Robbie Rip Rains. Steve is at work, and Doc is off peddling med kits to the masses. He'll be back in a week or two. He's going to be making a big circuit down through the southern states. But we wish him the best and hope Dark Angel does well. And Steve, hope you have a safe night at work. So you got the two of us tonight. Robbie, how the hell are you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing, bro?
I'm good. As Doc could say, I'm finer than frog hair split 4 ways.
That's pretty fine.
It's been hot as hell here.
Yeah, it got back up to 94 today.
Yeah, it was. I think it was close to 100 here, and the humidity on top of it was brutal.
Yeah.
Robert D says I've got low volume. Dude, the microphone is literally right in front of me. I changed it from its old position. Here's the mic. I mean, it is literally right in front of me. So I will try to make an adjustment.
I don't know how that, because I can hear you clear as bell, but I don't know how that translates by. I guess it's because we're both in the studio, but
yeah, if you're hearing me fine, it should be transmitting fine. I don't know what the issue is. Want to welcome everybody to the show. We have got a full house already. The chat's flying. Big shout out to the mods. DAX mods rock. You guys are kicking butt. Thank you guys for all the work you do. Sonia Morgan says she can hear me fine. If you Robert, if you can't hear me, you might have to turn your volume up a little bit because it looks like everybody else is hearing me okay. Josh Dalton says hear you 5x5. So I don't know what to tell you, man. It's probably something to do with YouTube because it seems to be transmitting pretty strong. Lene Perkins says Clark would make mention of how hot August is in Missouri. Clark has probably make several sarcastic. Just dump the ice water down the back of my armor. I'm not sure.
You don't do that here, sir.
I'm just kidding.
Oh.
Well, Robbie, and that's one thing Robbie and I can both tell you. In the August heat, wearing full body armor, you might as well be working inside your own personal sauna.
Yeah. Somebody, I can't remember what teacher it was, asked me the other day, said, how do you do that? So I guess you just get used to it. And I said, I tell people that you just get used to it. But I just say that, to people you don't want to talk to, you never get used to that.
Oh, no. You drink a lot of water and a lot of Gatorade. We used to pound Gatorade like it was going out of style.
Yep, that's just one of them things that you get more adept at handling it, but you never truly get used to how hot it is wearing all that stuff.
I tell you though, directing traffic in the August heat, about the third time somebody pulled up and rolled down their window and said, "Hot enough for you?" I was plotting homicide a couple of times. Like, yeah, it's plenty hot. Go away.
At least we don't have to wear them old polyester uniforms anymore.
True.
Whoa.
Northwoods, I've done body armor and mop gear. Mop gear's worse, but you don't normally wear mop gear for an entire 12-hour shift. I think the longest I was ever in mop gear was about 4 hours, but my body armor, that's bad enough, believe me.
Go to Anniston, Alabama in the middle of August and put on a full Tyvek suit and go run around outside for a couple hours running scenarios.
No,
I think I lost about 40 or 50 pounds in one day down there, sweating it off. You remember what that class told you I went to, that learning how to apprehend suspects while you're in a level 3 suit? Whew, that was not fun.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it is training that is very valid today, but it's still not something that you enjoy doing.
No.
Well, yeah, I think we're going to have a good show for you all tonight. We're going to be talking about the Kandahar Giants story. And there are some people that are trying to claim that the story is a complete hoax. We're gonna talk about both sides of that, but really it's up to you guys to decide what you believe. But this is a really interesting story, um, and the really interesting part is if it was just one isolated case, it would be freaky, but it's not, and that's the really scary part. Well, Robbie, what do you know about the Kandahar story?
Um, well, I mean, a lot of what I first knew about it, because I know you loosely based uh, the story that Gray Eagle was in, kind of sort of on that. So that was my, because I'd never really heard about it until I read that story, that short story. So then I started looking into it a little bit more and finding out that possibly one of our SF teams had an engagement with some of these things and possibly took one down, but some of them got taken down, or all of them. Was it? I can't ever remember.
I, I think it took down several members of the A
Right.
team.
So it's one of those things where I just it's almost it's like they tell you enough to where you'd be like, oh well, that's just so spectacular. It's got to be false. But
Right.
I think it was done that way intentionally, just to make it sound that way.
Well, for those of you that don't know the whole story, and I'm not going to go into a 20-minute explanation, I'll give you a summarized Cliff's Notes version of the story. So basically, in the early 2000s, I think it was somewhere around 2002, an Army Special Forces team. I don't know if they were Rangers or Special Forces Mountain, but they were Special Forces group. Were called in because they had lost contact with an entire unit of infantry had just gone off the grid, and they were pretty concerned about it. So they sent in this Special Forces A team, and they started finding when they got to the area last contact, they started finding articles of equipment like helmets and radio equipment and canteens and backpacks. They started finding all this stuff that had just been discarded. So they started tracking where they had gone and ended up going up this wide trail up a mountainside to a large cave. And outside the cave, there were bones laying around. There was a horrible stench emanating from the cave and lots of discarded equipment. Some of it not even ours, like AKs and stuff laying around. Well, before they could actually enter the cave, this thing comes out. And they described it as being a giant, a massive giant, covered. It had scraggly red hair and was wearing furs. Some accounts of the story said it had scraggly red hair all over its body, and other versions that I've heard said it was just like a beard and long hair. I tend to think it's probably just the beard and long hair, but again, I've heard so many versions of the story. It's hard to separate what the actual event was versus what it's kind of been embellished to. But this creature attacked, and one of the first things it did was ran a spear through one of these special forces guys, killed it, and then the firefight began. They started opening fire on these things, and small arms fire like the M4s didn't seem to have a whole lot of effect on it. It seemed to be pissing it off. And during this fight, they're opening up with everything they had, including squad automatic weapons and the bigger machine guns. And it killed several members of the team, and they finally killed it. Um, and when they checked out the cave, it looked like it had been eating what was left of that unit that went missing. Um, so they called in, said what had told their superiors what had happened, and they sent a Chinook to collect the body. And when the special forces team got back to base, they were all forced to sign non-disclosure agreements to not talk about it and to shut this incident up. Now, you would think that's where the story would end, but it really doesn't, because that's when the story started coming out, not just from people in the special forces group who mentioned it to somebody and the story talked, but from airmen that were on the base and from one crew chief that was the C1 was the crew chief on the C-130 that flew the body to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. They said this thing had a double row of teeth, which is really weird. That's not something a human would have. It had 6 fingers on each hand. Again, that's pretty bizarre. Um, and just the physiology of this thing, it was massive. Of course, you've got all the speculation as to, was it a species of humanoid? Was it a type of Bigfoot? Was it one of the Nephilim? And I'm not 100% sure what to say to answer that. It's definitely something that it's out of the ordinary, but it only gets weirder from there. Um, you don't generally see a concerted effort from the military to cover a story up like that. Usually they just ignore wild stories and let them run their course. But this one, they actually actively tried to cover up. People were told to shut up. People were pressured into not saying anything, yet the story continued to grow. And that was not the only time it happened. The one case that everybody knows about with the Special Forces unit, and the Army unit that went missing, and the Special Forces unit ended up killing one, that actually supposedly happened on three separate occasions. And in other cases where Special Forces Ranger units engaged several of the things which were above them on the mountainside, throwing rocks down at them. And supposedly there's some chopper footage out there. It's supposedly floating around, making its rounds, but I have not been able to locate a copy, like nose gun chopper footage from an Apache taking one out. Up until the withdrawal, Doc was in the Air Force. You guys all know that. I wish Doc was here to tell this, because he'll tell it better than me. Up until the withdrawal from Afghanistan, Air Force pilots that were flying in and out of the Air Force bases in Afghanistan were reporting picking these things up on their FLIR in the mountains above Bagram. So they were still seeing these things routinely. It was not something that was considered a big top secret issue, because so many people had seen them. Yet even still, the government has done what they can to tell the soldiers, you can't talk about this. This is all classified. You can't talk about this. But the stories still persist. They even went so far as to claim it was made up. The entire story was made up by L.A. Marzulli. I don't know if you guys are familiar with L.A. Marzulli. He's a writer, fantastic writer. He's also considered one of the world's experts on the Nephilim. He's written 9 books on the Nephilim, and has been given a couple of honorary degrees. He was given an honorary PhD in that field of study. So if there's a guy, who's probably got the inside scope, it's probably L.A. Marzulli. Yet they still tried to say he wrote it as a fiction piece. But when you look at the body of L.A. Marzulli's works, yes, he's written some fiction. Most of what he's written is not, and it's about the Nephilim. So that's kind of where we're at. They're still trying to claim L.A. Marzulli hoaxed the whole thing, yet witnesses keep coming forward. There's a comment on one of the Facebook posts I made. A guy said that one of his friends was in that unit and had told him the story. I haven't had anybody that was actually in the unit come forward, but there's so much of those stories going around. And I know those guys probably couldn't come forward even with a camera blacked out and their voice modulated, because somebody would talk and they'd probably suffer dire consequences. But personally, I think it's real.
Yeah, it was like I said, the military or government has sensationalized it so much to make it sound like it's so far-fetched that it almost makes you have to believe that it is real, just because of how much links they're going to, or how big of links they're going to suppress it.
Rose Red says, fun fact, the Seneca Native American people have legends of giants with red hairs, well, 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on both feet. Funny you should mention that, because I was going to make the correlation that not only is this story around Afghanistan, but, the red-haired giants of Lovelock Cave, those were proven real. They found the bodies, gigantic skeletons with red hair, extra fingers, double rows of teeth. They actually put them on display in the museum in Lovelock, Nevada. And they were on display for years until the Smithsonian heard about it. Then the Smithsonian wanted to study them, and they vanished. The museum in Lovelock still has the receipt that was signed for by the Smithsonian, but the Smithsonian claims they never received it and don't know what happened to them.
That pesky old bone collector. He strikes again.
Smithsonian is very good at that. There have been giant bones like that found all over the United States. I mean, all over the United States. A lot here in the Midwest, but when there was a group in World War II that unearthed a bunch of giant bones on one of the Aleutian Islands when they were building a runway, and the Smithsonian got that as well.
Well, I think somebody made the comment the other night, Saturday night when we were talking, and we kind of hit on the Smithsonian a little bit. There's always been speculation that the Vatican controls the Smithsonian, and
that would be awesome. Thank you.
I don't think that's too far of a stretch to think that the Vatican has its hands in something like that, because we've said it before. I mean, I think a lot of the stuff from Alexandria is under the Vatican.
Well, I don't like to jump down the Nephilim hole, because I don't like I don't like to bring in religion into the topic, and that's just my own personal take. I try to keep everything as much evidence based as we can. But bones were found. Bones have been documented,
but
and I don't know if they're Nephilim or what. But
if you want to go, I mean, think about it. How you and I look at things. If you want to go evidence based, what book describes what those things are better than the Bible?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
We say it all the time, DA. If you start at point A, you got to go where point A takes you, and the Bible clearly describes them. So what else could they be if they're not that? I mean, it just walks like a duck, quacks like a duck.
And even as much of a skeptic as I try to remain and stay focused on pure physical evidence, and again, I blame my time in law enforcement for that. I've got to have evidence to back it up. Even I have got to say the theory about the red-headed giants that makes the most sense is Nephilim.
Yeah, and the things that if you look at what the Vikings described as Skraelings, there was not a clear enough articulation between that it could have been a Bigfoot type creature, or it could have been a Nephilim type, or a Nephilim. But these giants of Kandahar, I mean, the descriptions are pretty much right down the line of what they're described as, and it just, I don't see how you can look at it and go in too many other directions.
Right.
Even if you want to take the religion out of it, you can, because you just look at it as, okay, well, this is a historical record. I mean, they've proven that a lot of things in the Bible are true. Now, I personally believe they're all, but that's neither here nor there. But there have been many things that are in the Bible that have been proven to be true, that are backed up with physical evidence. So these things are just one more thing, in my opinion, that is just backed up as to be proven true, because I think that's what it is. And I don't think you're going against your evidence base, or you're looking for the evidence if you stay away from it, because you can objectively look at it and say, okay, where can I get a good description of what these are? Oh, right here. Well, dang, it matches up,
Yeah. So, whether you choose to be a believer in the Bible or not, that's entirely up to you. But if you take the Bible simply as a text of, written from people that lived at that time, it's documenting the existence of these things. Whether you choose to believe they're Nephilim, fallen, come from fallen angels, whatever you think their source is, they were documented in the Bible.
Yeah, and that's my point. And, most everybody knows what my viewpoint is, but you can objectively look at it, just like you said, and say, okay, this is a historic document. It's already been proven that things in there really happened. So take it for what it's no different than looking at a Chinese manuscript that they wrote about things they saw.
Well, there were giants documented all over the globe.
That's what I'm saying. But looking and getting information in the Bible is no different than looking when you're doing it as an evidentiary thing. It's no different than looking at a Chinese manuscript about animals that they documented or things that they saw. It's just you're looking, okay, what did they say? And it's same region, so why not go to the Bible to look at that? I'm backing you up, saying that I don't think you're going against what you try to not do by looking in the Bible to say.
Well, like I said, even if you just take it as a historical text, as opposed to a religious text, if you take it just purely from historic value, it's describing these things.
Yeah.
And Linda Bergman is absolutely correct. That's the right area of the world for that those timeline and that text to be written.
Yeah, exactly.
Linda Bergman says in the book of Joshua and Enoch even talked about them. There's books currently in the Bible that talk about them. It makes you wonder what was in the books that the Catholic Church struck from the Bible in the Council of Mycenae. Robert D. says in the Bible it said, "In the days of Noah, so shall it be in the end of times." Beast of the fields type of thing.
That's very accurate. So I mean, it's kind of hard to have this show without getting some religious.
Well, supposedly the giants were wiped out during the flood, but I think they were wiped off the face of the earth.
Yeah,
I don't think they were wiped out from below it. And like we've talked about with cryptid sightings along caves, like the Mammoth Cave. Like the Mammoth Cave system, we don't know how deep or how far those caves go.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It does not. It says he destroyed the earth. It does not say he killed everything. It's like you said, wiped off the face of the earth. Things could have been driven deep into the earth, like we said. Because if you look in it says the fountains of the deep broke open. So all the water, it came from somewhere. It came from above and below.
Mm-hmm.
So if water was below and then it came up, that would have opened up all these enormous caverns and given things like that places to go.
Antonio Vasquez says in the book of Job, they mentioned dinosaurs. The Bible uses the word dragons. So, yeah, and we all know that the word dinosaur wasn't invented until what was the early 1800s?
I want to say 1890, no, 1880 something, I believe.
And it literally only means terrible lizard.
Yep.
But the Bible does mention dragons.
Over 100 times.
Every culture across the world mentions dragons. So it makes me wonder if, some of those things might have survived into much closer to modern times than we've ever been led to believe.
Oh, yeah. And, yeah.
Jeff Yardington says, DA, that's what the gate at that cave at Smiddle Cave is for. Yeah, I can see how that would slow something that big down.
For a little bit.
Yeah. I tell you, if I ever go out to that cave and it is smashed out from the inside, I'm probably just going to go, hey, this is probably a great time to be exploring somewhere else.
But like I say, yeah, it's kind of hard to have this conversation and not dip your toes into the religious part because, yeah, it's like like I said, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck, and those things have dang near every characteristic the Bible mentions that Nephilim have. So, Oh yeah, okay,
yeah. Well, just for the sake of argument, let's take the Nephilim topic off the table and discuss them as giants, as living relics of some ancient species on this planet. There's evidence of these things being found all across the planet. They found fossil records. They found bones in Lovelock Cave. The Smithsonian has hidden God knows how many sets of bones. So we know these things exist. And the fact that they're mentioned in the Bible, if the people that wrote that were contemporaries of these things being on the surface, they would have known about them. So whether or not they're of Nephilim origin or not is irrelevant to the fact that they are here, and may very well still be in the deep parts of the world.
And if you look at it from that standpoint, yes, there's even though the Smithsonian has stepped in and done what we know they've done that they don't claim to have done.
Right.
There's a reason that they're doing that. And to me, that's more intriguing as to why they're doing that, as to the question about whether these giants are here or not, is why they want to suppress that from everybody. You know, what does that prove or disprove, in my opinion?
Yeah. And I firmly believe that these giants not only existed, but still exist. And I think that is what we're seeing with the Kandahar Giants and the Giants of Lovelock Cave. And someone mentioned the Giants of Malta. Yeah, I think that this may be the origin of those. Whether or not you choose to believe they're Nephilim or not, it doesn't matter because they're here. I think the evidence points toward the Nephilim theory. But you can't rule out, much like Bigfoot or Dogman, that they might just be another species that occupied this planet at the same time as us. I'm just throwing that out there to be devil's advocate. Don't want to get a bunch of hate mail, but whether or not you choose to believe the Nephilim angle, there's enough believable, credible evidence to say they exist.
Yeah, well, that's the same thing that you can say about Bigfoot or any of these cryptids. And how many times have we said it, DA? If one person out of the millions and millions of people is telling the truth, if just one is telling the truth, that means they're real.
Right, exactly. Same thing with Bigfoot stories. There are thousands upon thousands of Bigfoot accounts. And if 99% of them were bogus, which I don't believe, but if 99% of them were bogus, that leaves 1% that are absolutely true, and that proves the pudding. That's the proof of the pudding right there. They're here.
And here's the thing: 1% may sound small, but 1% of what he's just talking about is still thousands and thousands and thousands of sightings
Steve
over
Patton
the entire Earth.
Says, DA, why do you think they don't want us to know, or why do they want to disprove this, even with the evidence? Because it would cast doubt on literally everything they've used to control the human population over the last several thousand years. It would cast doubt on everything that they teach us in Sunday school. It would cast doubt on everything they've taught us in school. It would pretty much throw our world into chaos if they just suddenly went, these things are here. There would be those people who went, oh yeah, I knew it all along. But there would be other people that would be like, we've got to find these things and kill them.
I think it goes more into the government narrative of what they've been trying to, what they've been trying to. I mean, because look at how, and there again, I'm not trying to start a big debate, but look how much evolution is pushed in schools now versus when you and I were in school.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And if something like that, and not just the Bible. I mean, like you said, there's other manuscripts from other religions of other places in the world who say these things existed, and evolution goes against every one of those.
Mm-hmm.
So if that narrative has something like these giants dropped on them that are spoken of in these religious texts, what does that do for their control theory of, oh no, this earth, there's nothing there. It was, everything was formed by accident. What does that do to that if things like this were proven to be, that were spoke of in all these religious texts? What does that do to that?
It sets most of the scientific world on its ear.
Yep. That's my opinion. Now, for what it's worth.
Hi, Phyllis. It's the bottom of the hour. I thought we'd do something a little different tonight. Instead of hearing about Dark Angel right off the bat, tonight you're going to hear about Lone Wolf Customs and some of the stuff that Robbie's been working on. Some of it you'll be able to see on the table when we're at the Bigfoot conference in Ohio in October. But I'd like you guys to see some of the amazing stuff that Robbie's been working on, and I'll show off some of it right off the bat. This is the laser etched uh, business card case that he made for me, and these are the business cards, and I'm pretty happy to show these off. These are laser etched on aluminum with a working scanner code on the back. Robbie's doing some amazing work with that laser.
Well, thank
Robbie,
you, bro.
go ahead and tell us a little more.
Like DA said, there's going to be some things on the table up there that are going to be sold. I'm just the only thing that I've got to show right now is just what's in here. I get the rest of the stuff's kind of sort of in there where the laser and all that area is. But we've got some new styles of hats, some new leather patches. And here comes some of the wild hunt stuff for y'all that like the Margolin stuff. Team Odin with the wild hunt logo. It says "Embrace the Suck" on it. And then another, just same saying, but just a different patch and a different color hat. And then I got to put this one back in the press because I think I took it out too quick. It's kind of peeling up in the corner, but the rest of them are fine. But it's just, a bass in front of an American flag and the black and green hat. And I've got about, 5 more styles coming, DA, that we're going to have some different.
Ryan says you need to come up with a nifty keen Wendigo logo for him. I can send you some artwork. We'll see what works on the laser.
Yeah, long as it's a good quality picture, and you've seen what we can do with good quality stuff. Like your business cards were easy to do.
Yeah, I love those cards. So, I can't wait to start handing them out.
We're gonna might have some challenge coins up there, hats, obviously. Got some of the little aluminum wallets with the RFID chip in it. We're gonna have some of those with some of the wild hunt and dark frontier stuff on it.
Some whiskey flasks for those.
Whiskey flasks. Got some shot glasses.
If I could reach my whiskey flask, I'd show it off, but it's behind my green screen.
Yeah, but mine's all the way over there on the other side. But there's gonna be some stuff up there. We're working on getting the website. Tyler's working on that now, so hopefully we'll have the website up and running here shortly. We're trying because I've Taylor, and most of y'all know my daughter Taylor. She's part owner in the company, and her boyfriend Tyler. They're both helping me out, and we're trying to turn this into a full-time thing for all three of us. So, that's about all we got going on right now. We got 3 lasers, so we can do a lot of stuff, a lot of varied things.
Robert D, we are working on some shot glasses. Robbie's already got a couple of those made. And yes, Lori, he's got several Embrace the Suck items. And we're even going to be working on an Embrace the Suck t-shirt. Noah and I have already started working on the logos.
That one right there was an Embrace the Suck.
Robbie, won't you get your Lone Wolf Customs contact and post it in chat? Folks, if you guys are enjoying the show and think we've earned it, I would certainly appreciate your like and subscribe to the channel. Our analytics are still showing about 40% of the people who watch the show aren't subscribed to the channel. So we would certainly love to have you guys subscribe and be part of the Ex MachiNation and continue to help us grow the channel. So if you haven't had a chance, please hit that like, share, and subscribe. Prospecting says you can do stuff for the other podcast. Yeah, you can do stuff for what's really out there too.
Yeah, I do, but this is the bigger of the podcast, so this one gets preferential treatment for stuff like that.
Don Dalle and Nogari says, "Can you engrave a blade if it's sent to you?" Yes, he's done it several times.
You got one to show him, DA?
Yes, I've got. This is one of my scallywag knives. This is the gunner's mate, and he put the Team Odin logo on one side, and on the other, the Dark Frontiers logo. That one's a little harder to see. So that's my gunner's mate, my scallywag gunner's mate.
Oh yeah. I can show my boarding axe because that's a little bit bigger emblem. I forgot I had it sitting right here.
Yeah, that one came out really nice.
Yeah.
Don says he wants his bounty engraved. I'm sure Robbie can take care of that for you.
Yep. As long as it's the black, it'll engrave. I can engrave it if it's, but you can't really. My gunner's mate's on my go bag, so I can't show you. I engraved it, but it's the stainless, and it's a lot harder to see on that. If it's the black anodized, it shows up really good. Thank you, Sonia. Appreciate that. I'd like to sell out.
We might hear from Doc at the top of the hour, but I wanted to give Robbie a chance to show off some of the goodies he's been working on. He's been putting out some really awesome stuff, and I literally just got my cards and my card case in the mail today, and I love these things. They are fantastic. But anyway, we were discussing the Kandahar Giants, were we not?
Yes, we were.
So
them Kandahar Giants.
I personally I believe there's too much information, too much evidence to give any credibility to it being a hoax by L.A. Marzulli. I don't think that's the case at all. Again, the case has been made that he created the whole story, but with so many eyewitnesses coming forward and more stories coming out after that one, I don't think it's possible. I don't think that this thing was just a hoax because there's too much corroborating information. And the description of these Kandahar Giants matches the red-haired giants from Lovelock Cave. So I can't deny this story. I can't say this story is made up. It may turn out to be. I'm not saying 100% chance, but to me it just rings true, and especially with as much corroboration has come forward about it.
Yeah, well, and that's like we talk about with all these other cases. When you start looking, if you just have 1-2 people say it, maybe not. But when you start having all these people coming forward, and every one of them saying roughly the same thing, and independent of each other, you have to start looking at it a lot more seriously. And I think you hit the nail on the head with that. It's just when you just start looking at how much of the evidence is there, it just starts stacking up on it, and you can't ignore it.
Right. Ryan said we can't claim it's made up. We can only say that anything is possible. I would definitely agree with that statement. But
we don't claim that. That's what they're claiming is made up.
They made the claim that it was made up. I don't necessarily believe it. But I wanted to present it to you because it's one of the versions of the story that's out there. And I didn't want to not provide that simply because, in all fairness, you should be made aware of that possibility. But from terminology we used to use in law enforcement reports, based on the preponderance of evidence, my heart says this story at least rings true.
The totality of the circumstances
and the preponderance of evidence.
And I think that this is this topic, or it's one of those that a lot of people feel like you do about, oh, well, I can't talk about these giants without getting religion into it.
Right.
And I think a lot of people kind of tiptoe around it, but Bigfoot, Dogman, it's easy to talk about those without
right
throwing religion into it. It's hard to, like I said, it's hard to talk about these without getting some of
Without
that in there.
at least talking about the
Yeah,
subject.
but I
Mark
think
Napier says, "Does L.A. Marzulli believe the giants were Nephilim?" Yes, he does, and he's actually published 9 books on the Nephilim. He's considered one of the world's experts on Nephilim.
yeah, I think that you have to look at things objectively when you're talking about this. That's a part of it that you have to visit that. But
Ken H says, "I've watched a deal on the military taking out 2 Nephilim, 1 man and 1 woman, and flown out of Afghanistan mountains in Chinook helicopters." There's so many stories of this. It's not just the one. But yeah, somebody asked if Doc knew somebody that was involved. Doc knew a couple of crew chiefs that were cargo crew chiefs on C-130s that had seen them on the thermals and when they flew in and out of Bagram.
well, do you remember that video that somebody showed us a year or two ago?
Mm-hmm.
You remember? I just want to make sure you remember which video I'm talking about. The one from the helicopter.
The flare taken from the chopper.
I wonder if, because we never were told exactly where that was from or where it was at. I wonder if that was some of that we were talking about just a minute ago.
Well, I knew there was footage floating around from a flare of them following and trying to take out a giant.
But that's pretty much what that was. That's pretty much exactly what that was.
I'll look back through my old messages and see if I can find that file. Ken says the military lost 60 men to them. It doesn't surprise me, as these things were very, very difficult to kill under the best of circumstances, and their muscle density and bone density would be so thick, our small arms would probably not do a lot of damage to it.
And see, this is where I think that, because if you read those descriptions, that don't sound anything like any Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Shiatonka, any of that stuff. That sounds completely, totally, 100% different than any of the normal cryptid sightings we get about that. That's why it's a different thing. It's not the same thing.
Exactly. K Bowers, I only presented the L.A. Marzulli hoax connection just so you guys had the information. I don't believe it for a second. I think this event. Well, I think that many of these events happened in Afghanistan and been shut up. Mark Napier, weren't some of them supposed to have armor on? Yes. Some of them had like I think it was either copper or brass armor.
And to expound on what you just said, DA, that's something that it's not right if we only present one side of this. We have to, if there's a counter to what we're talking about, you have to put that out there. And just because we put a counter out there, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're
supporting it
or buying into it. But
just for sake of completeness, we included it. Antonio Vasquez says, "Do you guys think one day you'll go with Martin Groves where he had experience in LBL?" Maybe. I mean, that Martin's health hasn't been great in the last few years, and
Martin
mine hasn't exactly been the best. But yeah, I would like to get in there at least where he had this.
Well, Martin was at the LBL at the meet and greet. Mm-hmm. I actually got to hang out with Martin for a little while down there, but he didn't go out and do it because just like DA's talking about, his health is not. He goes, he went, hung out. I don't think he even stayed at the campsite. House or Spencer or Misty's in, they might can answer that, or Pyro or any of the ones that were there. I don't think he went out. I think he just stayed around the campsite. But he was there.
Dr. 45120 Sharp Rothstein says, "Are there any other recent reports of giants other than Afghanistan?" Yeah, there are giant stories all over the world, and some of the more recent ones come from Malta, which, again, it's a Mediterranean area.
Yeah. Roughly, it's the same. Would that be hemisphere? Would that be the proper terminology for that? Same hemisphere?
Yeah. Steve Patton says, "The Giants have been referenced on several other podcasts by military members." There are a lot of military guys. Some guys came forward from Wright-Patterson who said they saw them unloaded. Some of the crew chiefs have come forward that were involved in transporting them. So there's just too much independent corroboration to just toss this out.
Well,
even if, as Ryan was saying, other details have been added on, because any story you tell, by the time it's done making the rounds, it's it's like that game with telephone we used to play when we were kids. By the time the sentence gets back to you, it's barely recognizable. But there's still enough of this that still resounds with information we already had. So even if some of the details have been embellished or changed, the core of the story has not changed, and that's, to me, that's the most interesting part about it. And it's the same thing if you're taking a cryptid report. You've got to kind of gauge how much of this is them reminiscing the story, and how much did they add to this to try to make it sound more interesting. And it does happen, believe me. You just kind of got to pick through it and listen and pay attention to body language. Um, like Robbie was saying, once you've taken those NLP classes, it's hard not to. But you've got to watch for those details to know which details are really bothering them. Like when we had Fred Roll on the show, when Fred started talking about his experience, that dude was upset. He was visibly upset, and even his dog sensed it. So I firmly believe Fred's story, but I've heard a few others, and I'm not going to name any names because I'm not the kind of guy that wants to encourage or start drama. But I have heard a few others that I have very serious doubts about the stories. But you've got to kind of gauge those for yourself. I'm not going to tell you what to think or how to think. We're just sharing what we know, and if you can think we're full of crap or you can agree with us, but it's just what we've learned and what we want to share. Sonia Morgan says, you guys are making me nervous about Arizona. This is new to me. Of course, I live in South Carolina. If they were in Lovelock, Nevada, they could very easily be in the mountains of Arizona.
I've never heard of any being found in South Carolina though, but that doesn't
I
mean
know giant bones. Let me see if I've still got that map. Give me just a second to check my files, because I know I had a map that showed where giant bones had been unearthed. Just a second.
cave hours with the blazing saddles. Excuse me while I whip this out.
Okay, now I found it. Just got to give me a second to get it opened up and shareable. Okay, now this map is where giant skeletons have been unearthed in just the United States. Oh, didn't mean to do that.
Wrong
This
way.
is this is just the United States, and each one represents a dig site where giants have been found. So take this for what you will, but this is a map of the United States where giants have been found.
Whoop. Looks like there's some in the upstate.
And 99% of those, 99% of those were taken by the Smithsonian or reburied in the ground where it was where they were unearthed were given protected status, and no one's allowed to dig there. No archaeologists, no nothing. But these are known places in the United States, just continental, not even Alaska, but known places in the United States where giant skeletons have been unearthed. Missouri sure does have a lot, Roxanne. But look how dark the overlaying images are through Ohio and Pennsylvania. There's a lot more there. If that don't make you think, nothing will.
That's a lot. Yep, Sonia, looks like we got some places to go look for. Because some of those were in the upstate, it looked like, or at least close to it.
And I got another one for you. Let me share this image. This one also be one of those things that make you go, it's a clue.
Dum, 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 dum.
This is a chart. You can see my mouse. 6 foot tall on average. The average present-day man. Southeast Turkey in the 1950s, they found 15-foot bones. The Maximus Thrax Caesar of Rome, who lived from 235 to 238 AD, was 8 feet 6 inches. Goliath from the Bible was 10 feet 6 inches. The OG king of Bajran,
That's Og. That's Goliath's brother.
Og, okay, 12 feet. 1577 AD, under the overturned oak tree in the canton of Lucerne, bones were found 19 feet 6 inches tall. In 1456 AD, in France, beside the river of Valence, a 23-foot skeleton was unearthed. In 1613, in France again, near the castle Chaumont, a nearly complete skeleton, 25 feet 6 inches tall. And the biggest was found in 650 to 640 AD by the Carthaginians, who uncovered two this size after an earthquake, 36 feet tall.
That's a big youngin', as Doc would say.
That's a big feller. I'd hate to try to buy shoes for him.
Yeah, he makes Shaq look like baby shoes.
Yeah, no kidding. Karen Polson says, I'd heard one story that a grandmother's village in Afghanistan used to have to bring a goat up to a cave to keep the giant out of their village. I wouldn't think a goat would fill one of those things up very much. As big as those things are, you'd think a goat would just be a snack. Gary Lowe says, so Jack the Giant could have been real. Well, they found a pair of skeletons that were 36 feet tall. So, yeah, I would say that really puts a big question mark next to.
Wonder if there were any bean sprouts around his skeleton. From where he cut that beanstalk down.
No kidding.
But there again, what we say, all these little fairy tales and legends and things like that have some type of truth with them. Well, find a 36-foot skeleton.
And that was documented in recovered texts found around Carthage, that they'd found 36 foot tall. Of course, the skeletons are long since lost to antiquity. They may still exist somewhere, maybe underneath the Vatican, but
probably.
The giant skeletons they found in Lovelock Cave, I believe, were between 8 and 9 feet tall. K. Bauer says, if I could spell it, I'd put a Young Frankenstein quote right now.
Which one? There's so many.
A lot of good ones, good quotes from Young Frankenstein.
Bruca.
Frau Blucher.
Do you know what that means?
It means glue.
Which is why the horses were doing what they were doing every time they said
it. Dr. 45120 says, I'd be afraid of stepping in the from the 36-footer. Good Lord. Jeff
I'm about to say Jeff Goldblum
said on Jurassic Park, that's one big pile of shit.
Droppings, dino droppings.
But when you take any one of these things alone, they can be ignored. But when you start connecting the dots and looking at the sheer number of giant skeletons that have been unearthed just in the United States, we're not talking about around the world, just in the lower 48 of the U.S., it is impossible to just go, oh no, this is just a made-up story.
I mean, like we said, you see one or two things, you're like, yeah. But you put up things like that you just put up where they've been found all the way back to 650, or was that the earliest one? 650? Is that what it was, or somewhere around in there?
Yeah.
All the way up to now.
To modern fightings. There was one found in the 1950s in Turkey. The others kind of date back to antiquities, but they're still found here fairly regularly. They just get shut up. The archaeologists will step in, and of course that inevitably gets called in the experts from the museums, and then the Smithsonian gets involved, and the whole thing gets shut right up.
Yep.
Gary Golo says, like the 15-foot hairy man in Alaska. Suddenly, that doesn't sound so incredible, does it?
Some of those pictures that William sent us. Maybe that explains those a little bit better than just a really big Bigfoot.
Randall, I understand. I understand what you mean there, but we try to keep a fairly neutral position here and just present what we know, or what we think we know, and we don't really try to take any kind of religious or political stance, because that invariably causes grief in the chat. It causes dirty messages and hate mail. So just for the sake of argument, what we try to do here is just present the information and let you draw your own inferences. We're not taking a political side. We're not taking a religious side, even though I definitely have my own opinions on that. I just don't discuss those in public, and I think that's best for all of us, because the way things are so divided right now, I don't really want to have that kind of arguments happening in our chat, because we've always had a great chat. We've always had a great sharing of information, and I want to keep it that way.
Agreed. But if there was people at one time that were 36 feet tall,
that's a big fella.
Well, think about some like the pictures that we saw that Jesus found out in that mountain range behind his house. Remember the ones he showed us? And we were talking about how big the things were.
Well, some of those, like stone axe heads, even like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime would have had a very tough time swinging that on a stick big enough to support it.
But
that would have probably weighed 500 or 600 pounds.
But think about how big that was. Somebody that was 36 feet, that would be a toy to them.
Right. My guess would be what Jesus Payon found. If that was actually put on a branch big enough to support the weight of it and use it as a weapon, it's
branch, that's putting on a tree.
12 to 15. Yeah, that would probably be something in the 12 to 15 foot range to swing that. Sonia, I'm right there with you. 36 feet tall. Well, let me. I think I can put that into perspective. Give me just a second. Let me bring up an image.
Some of the
right there. That guy is 6 feet tall. The tallest part of that gate is probably 36 to 40 feet.
Yeah, there you go. That sums it up pretty good.
Yeah, that's probably the top. The very top part of that, probably 36 to 40 feet.
Think about some of the Scandinavian legends about trolls and things like that. There's some trolls that they claim were, 40 feet tall.
Mm-hmm. And even taller.
Yeah. So here, back to the same statement again. It's all based off some form of truth.
Mm-hmm. Had some good comments I'd kind of like to go at. Antonio Vasquez says, anything's possible. Look at the giant trees in California. Absolutely. Pyromedic says, a friend who is one of the last Natchez Indians told me his grandmother told him their people used to bury a giant in each of the four directions in their mounds. Holy crap. Uh, Karen Polson says, I talked to a Wayne May, ancient American. He had a dig in Minnesota at the time, late 90s, of giants. Would not give the location as the Smithsonian has swooped in on his digs. Holy crap. Roxanne says, DA, would the 36-foot tall, would they be considered cloud eaters, or was that a different kind of giant? It's hard to say. I mean, 36 feet is a big, big individual. I mean, that would take mountain climbing equipment just to climb a bluff that tall. I mean, it's not like you could just. Well, some people could freehand it.
Well, that's a 3-story building.
Yeah,
That's over a 3-story building.
Die falling from that height. Wow, Thompson says, how heavy would a 36 feet? Oh, how heavy would a 36-foot tall man weigh? Dude, he'd weigh tons. I mean, considering how there's a formula for scaling things up. I'd have to look for the formula again, but I would guess that thing would probably weigh more than a semi. I mean, it'd be, extremely heavy. Mark Napier says, look at the size of the doorways in the ancient city of Petra. Yeah, those doors are massive. And why would they need to build something that big for people? I mean, hell, it would have taken a team of horses to open one of the damn things.
Yeah. I mean, it explains a lot of the things that we have seen and had questions about. Just like you said, like a lot of those things that Jesus showed us from the last time he was on the show.
Mm-hmm.
That you're like, who in? Because some of those things were bigger than what we would think of a Bigfoot being able to even.
Right. Would dwarf even a
maybe
massive Bigfoot.
Maybe it's strong enough to use it, but it would be not practical to use. It's like, if I could swing a 100-pound sledgehammer, great if I'm strong enough to do it, but is that really practical?
No, it's a recipe for bad back.
Yeah.
DCat says, did you explain why that gate is that tall? Maybe. I think that is definitely designed to keep something big at bay. And your guess is as good as mine as to what. I've usually, when I thought about it, I usually thought it was some type of Bigfoot. But I don't know. I mean, that gate is just massive, and it's clearly not designed to just keep people out. It wouldn't need to be anywhere near that big if it was just for people.
Yeah.
Antonio Vasquez says, look at the Great Wall of China. Yeah.
And what's that they say? The truth is always stranger than fiction.
Mm-hmm.
What do you need a wall that big for? Oh, nothing.
Yeah, it's clearly not to keep out a dude on horseback.
No.
Oh, top of the hour. Well, it's a good opportunity for us to take a second, and we'll hear a little bit from old Doc. I will put the information up here in just a second, but let's have a word from old Doc himself.
Hey everybody, this is Kerry Pocket Doc Davis from Dark Angel Medical, and you are listening to DA Ex Machina with DA Roberts. You may recognize me or some of my products from Dark Angel Medical in some of the Apex Predator, Lakeview Man, and Wild Hunt books, and you can get those products at www.darkangelmedical.com, along with training classes on how to use those products and save a life. Shoot us an email at info@darkangelmedical.com and be the difference.
And if you guys go over to darkangelmedical.com, don't forget to use discount code Cryptid20 for 20% off your entire order. To let them know we sent you and get a kit and be prepared, because as Doc says, the time chooses you.
Birthdays in boxes.
Dang right. I carry a kid everywhere I go.
Yep. One on my body armor every day with me at work. One on my plate carrier that goes in the field with us when we go out.
Paramedic says, have you seen what are supposed to be plow heads at the top of the Rock Museum in Branson? No one our size could use anything. Yeah, and it would have taken massive plow animals to pull them. I mean, way bigger than anything we've got currently.
Well, I mean, think about the legend of Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox. Where'd that come from?
Yeah, there's got to be something to those stories. I can't. Does that mean that we once had giant blue ox wandering around? I don't know.
I mean, maybe
weirder things have certainly happened.
Yeah, I say stranger things than that have happened. But there again, it's one of those things that it had to come from somewhere. I mean, are there people creative enough to just think up a story like that? Yeah, obviously. I'm having a show with one of them right now, but not everything is just fiction and made up. I mean, and using that as a point, even though he's a great fiction writer, 90% of how he writes is based on his real life experiences. So that just kind of proves that point, in my opinion, anyway, for what it's worth.
And even fiction draws its own accounts from things in the real world. I mean, look at Silence of the Lambs. Hannibal Lecter is a terrifying character, but he's based on several real world serial killers. Ed Gein being one of them. Look at the Wolfman and the Frankenstein stories. Those are based on I believe the Wolfman origins, the legends of the Wolfman stem from Dogman, from the cynocephali, but it could be a curse people actually change. I won't rule that out. Same with Frankenstein. There was a doctor who lived in Frankenstein Castle that performed weird experiments on human bodies, and that gave rise to the Frankenstein story.
Truth is stranger than fiction.
Something to it. Right. Roxanne says, DA, there's huge evidence of giants that were in Malta. Yeah, emphasis on the huge. But yeah, there's references to these giants all over the place. Supposedly there were even a race of giants in ancient Egypt.
Well, look at the pyramids. I mean, we always speculate how the pyramids were built. Well, if the people that they had building them were 36 feet tall, that would explain a whole lot.
Yeah.
I mean, if you had 200 regular sized people or 200 people that were each 36 foot tall, how quick could you build something like that?
Yeah. And, like they've discovered with the pyramids, most of that stone was quarried hundreds of miles away.
Yeah.
Same thing with Stonehenge. Those massive stone slabs were quarried hundreds of miles away.
So I think the deeper you get into this,
the harder it is to disbelieve it.
Yeah. But also, we might answer a question or two, but I think we make some more.
Yeah. I think we definitely kick over more questions than we answer.
Yeah.
Just Ryan says, people always doubt that the Egyptians built their own pyramids, but they never doubt the Mexicans built their own pyramids. I'm not saying they didn't do it. I mean, we just don't know. But, there's supposedly races of giants all through Central and South America as well. Maybe giants assisted. Maybe they did it on their own. We don't know, because those records were either destroyed or purposefully hidden from us.
Well, there you go. I mean, that seems to be the common theme for them government types.
Yeah. Poncho says, DA Ex Machina podcast, what do you think of the pyramids being docking stations for craft charging, for recharging? Well, allegedly, when the pyramids were originally built, they were coated with a different stone than we see today. All of that was stripped off of it. It was supposedly coated, I believe it was with limestone, and that they were. One of the theories is that that's what they were. They were gigantic batteries, essentially, and they've found evidence of battery technology in ancient Egypt. Makes you wonder why people that were basically living with Stone Age technology needed a battery.
Yeah. How many of those tombs of pharaohs did they find those ancient batteries in?
Yeah, a number of them. Antonio Vasquez says every country has pyramids and a lot of them in the oceans. Yeah, there there are a lot of answers. A lot of answers we'll probably never have in our life.
Yeah, because I mean, the thing is, we don't even know if there's stuff at the bottom of the Marianas Trench. There may be civilizations down there that would. I know, Atlantis is something that people
Or
talk
underground.
about. Yeah, and that's probably something we'll never know. But there very well could be, because we could be living in basically what would be equivalent of a junkyard of what the Earth used to look like.
Mm-hmm.
So there could be stuff that there could be millions of skeletons of people 36 plus feet at the bottom of the Marianas Trench that we'll never see.
Yeah.
I mean, like we said, stranger things have happened.
And even if they did find, Atlantis, would we ever really know? Would the government shut it up because they wanted the technology for themselves?
Absolutely. And, I think we've talked about Antarctica. I think that could be maybe where some of that stuff leads to.
Thanks for the super chat, Josh. Honestly,
Josh.
I think they still exist. I just think they're deep underground.
Well,
the Lovelock Cave, they were living in caves. The Giants of Kandahar, they were living in caves. In Malta, they were living in caves. I think they just went deep, and I think they may still exist. Maybe there aren't a lot of them, but I think many of them still do.
That book I told you about, The Last Hunter, that's a lot of that premise of that book is it's Nephilim, and they called them the I want to say it was like the old gods or something, or men of renown. That was it. That's what he called them. Thor, Odin, all that. They were real, more or less demigods, I guess. Like, for lack of a better term, I can't remember if that's how the term he used, and they were all huge, like probably.
Well, a lot of Norse mythology is about them fighting the Jotuns.
Yeah,
fighting the Giants. Josh, you probably missed that episode. I know you haven't been around much lately, dude, and I'm glad you're here, and hope we see you around quite a bit more. But we've talked about the hollow Earth theory, and I don't necessarily believe that the Earth is hollow like a big egg with another complete ecosphere inside it, but I think it's networked with massive caverns. We've already discovered that the Mammoth Cave system, which is one of the deepest cave systems in the world that we know of, runs from Maine to southern New Mexico. It's much bigger than they originally thought. We have no idea how deep it goes, and we have no idea what's down there. We know at the deep parts of the ocean, we've got bioluminescence. If that exists in deeper caverns, they wouldn't need a sun. They wouldn't need anything like we normally have. We know spores and fungus grow at those depths, and they're edible. We know that there are animals that are evolved at those depths. Blind cave fish, different species of bats. So what else is down there? Because it's impossible for us to go. I mean, not impossible, but a deep delving expedition takes years of planning and numerous base camps. It's not like going to the heart of the Amazon where you can have your supplies dropped in. You've got to establish these base camps along the way and supply them, and then have teams who do nothing but resupply these base camps so they can set up another base camp, go farther, go farther, go farther. And also then they start running into problems with air quality. So we're just not meant to go that deep. That doesn't mean these things aren't.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I honestly believe this. I think Jules Verne knew something, because all the stuff that he talked about was basically future tech. And I don't think it's that people read his stuff and said, "Oh, I think that's a good idea. I think I'll invent that." And that's solely where we got a nuclear submarine, because
Right.
simple fact of the way he described things in the Journey to the Center of the Earth. Now they're finding,
They're
biosphere.
finding he was right,
Yeah, and
and he
I
had
think-
no way to know that back then.
yeah, I think he knew something, or somebody knew something that he knew that spilled the beans, or what, however it happened. Because there's no way he writes 20,000 Leagues Beneath the Sea and describes what is basically a nuclear submarine. I mean, obviously there was differences, but that's pretty much what he was describing. And how.
Yeah.
And like I said, I know people are going to say, well, that's how we got nuclear submarines is based on what he described. But how could he describe that type of technology and know that something could do that?
He was writing about nuclear submarines in an age of wooden ships.
Yeah. And I firmly believe that there are people throughout time that are far ahead of where they should be. I'm not saying that there's time travelers. I'm not saying they're not, but I'm not saying that's what I believe. But I believe there are people throughout time that are specifically in the place that they're in for certain reasons. What are those reasons? I don't know.
Kay Bowers, you're absolutely right. When Tesla died, the FBI seized everything in his apartment. Most of it is still classified. But apparently there was some connection between Tesla and Trump's father or his grandfather. But the Trump family actually has some of Tesla's old diaries, but not all of them. Most of them were swooped up by the government and classified. And I don't know. This is like a can of worms inside a can of worms. I mean, the more you pull, the squigglier it gets. But I don't think any of it's outside the realm of possibility.
Right, and the thing with the Giants, like we said, are they Nephilim? Maybe. Are they something else? Maybe. But all this stuff, whether it be the Giants, whether it be cryptids, whether it be the things with Antarctica, whether it be what were the pyramids really built for, all that stuff is stuff that has been, in my opinion, has been purposely kept from us for a reason. And like I said earlier, that to me is the bigger mystery and almost the scarier thing as to why that we're being treated like mushrooms, so to speak, about that. Kept in the dark and fed BS.
Yeah. Josh Jones was saying, I don't remember the specifics, but they're finding that the human brains can quantum entangle. Basically the human brain is a living computer.
Well, look at Pacific Rim. How they piloted the Jaegers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that may not be actual quantum entanglement, but they called it a neural handshake.
Yeah.
Two human brains
linking up. Like a primitive modem, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, it's a dial-up connection, if you want to call it that. But I mean,
yeah, was like dialing up AOL back in the day.
Yeah.
Josh Jones says it's possible that people like Jules Verne and Nikola Tesla were able to tap into that consciousness. It again, that's as good a theory as anything we've got, because we just don't know. But it makes it really makes you wonder how these guys were able to predict technologies that just they had no way of knowing what could possibly exist.
And go
Tesla predicted the cell phone in the 20s.
Well, go back and look at oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot Da Vinci. Look at some of the drawings of stuff that he made: helicopters, parachutes. How in the world did Da Vinci have a blueprint for a helicopter?
Well, I think if I remember correctly, they later proved that Da Vinci's helicopter design wouldn't fly, but it was generations ahead of its time in thought.
But guess what? The Wright's airplane didn't fly the first however many times either. I mean,
and the ironic part about the Wright brothers' first flight is when you look at how far we've come since their first flight. I mean, that's only been just over 100 years now.
Yeah.
What was that first flight in, like 1917 or something like that? I don't remember the exact year, but it was the early 1900s. So
it only went a football field.
Yeah, the Wright brothers' first flight is shorter than the length of the wingspan of a 747.
But here's the thing, Da Vinci's plan may not have, or his blueprint may not have worked. But what if Da Vinci had just what the Wright brothers had? What could he have done with just the technology that the Wright brothers were afforded?
Well, what if we hadn't lost everything in what they call the Dark Ages? Where would our technology be right now if we hadn't lost every scientific and man-made advancement up until the Dark Ages? And like we were saying, I firmly believe the Dark Ages were engineered because they wanted to get a lot of that knowledge out of the hands of everyday people.
I think the modern day Dark Ages was engineered too.
I would not argue with that,
because that's what it tried to do, and I mean, on some levels, it succeeded.
Mark Napier says brains like Tesla's tend to burn out. He was in love with a pigeon before he died. Well, look at Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes went bat guano crazy before he died. Antonio Vasquez says, do you think one day we could go back in time and document it? Maybe.
Well, Einstein proved that time travel is possible.
Yeah. Theoretically, it's possible.
Yeah.
Would it happen in our lifetime? Hard to say. But even if we were able to, would they still not do everything in their power to keep us from getting that knowledge?
But see, but you get in a paradox when you start talking about time travel, because and honestly, if you think about the way Bruce Banner explained it in the Avengers movie, it really makes sense, because if you're here and you go back here, that's not really no longer your past. That's your future, because you're still trapped. It's like the timeline goes straight, and it's not like you can turn around and go backwards on this, but you're altering your trajectory on your timeline.
And then the question becomes, did you change the timeline, or did you create one specifically for you?
That's the paradox. That's what I'm talking about. So you can't change. That's what, talking about changing the past. You can't change the past because that's your future that you're going back to, and the future that you just came from is technically your past.
Mm-hmm.
I know it'll melt your mind when you start trying to think about it.
I hate temporal physics.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
it gives me a headache.
It's fun to think about sometimes, but that's not something that I'd want to discuss on a daily basis because you would have like a migraine every other day.
K. Bauer says another monkey wrench. NASA says they lost all the tech for the Apollo and getting to the moon. Just saying. Well, they've also said that the cold rolled steel process they use to make barrels for battleships is lost. That they don't know how to do it anymore.
Well, that's if you believe what
If
they
you
say
believe.
they lost.
Right.
Because I guarantee you that somebody in the government knows how to do all that still.
I'd say it's in an archive somewhere.
Yeah, it's archived somewhere, maybe under the Vatican, maybe in the Smithsonian, but it's there somewhere. Somebody knows
under the Pentagon.
Yep.
There's vast archives under the Pentagon too.
Oh, there's vast archives everywhere in Washington, D.C. That place is a labyrinth, up and down.
Well, that's a whole other show right there. Washington, D.C. is an entire city designed and built by Masons. So there's a whole other rabbit hole and show to go down there.
Yeah, and what's really funny about that, talking about, art imitating life, most of that stuff that was in National Treasures seems so far-fetched. I just about would bet you a paycheck that there's some stuff just like what they had that movie, or even more elaborate, what they had in that movie National Treasures in real life. I mean, I ain't trying to be no conspiracy theorist or nothing, but Washington, like you said, that's a whole nother show, because there's just, when you start getting into the Masons and the Knights Templar and all the things that they did, and whew, I mean, that's, National Treasure, Indiana Jones, and the Last Crusade all tied up into one. Yeah, little Patty, the President's Book of Secrets, you throw that one in there too, because that's part of it. The ring knockers, the skull and bones.
Sorry, had to send a message real quick.
Yeah, Sonny's right. That'd be a 4-week series.
Yeah.
Part 1.
Randall Broada says, D and Robbie, why does the Smithsonian have so much power in our government? Does our government control them, and is a form of our government? It's amazing that they have so much power. Well, it's not when you think about why the Smithsonian was created. As much as we like to think that it was created to preserve history and to preserve artifacts from America's past, it was originally created to suppress information of civilizations that existed on this continent before we got here, because Thomas Jefferson set out to have the Smithsonian not only document this stuff, but to hide certain things, because the concept of manifest destiny, that it was our destiny to settle this unsettled land
that was already settled.
That when there are other civilizations already there, the Cahokia Mounds in Illinois, mound builders all across the U.S., some of these amazing structures that exist that they don't want us to talk about. If you ever get a chance to go to Cahokia, Illinois, go to the Cahokia Mounds. It was a major city. I think it had like 40,000 people live there. May have been more than that. But the Smithsonian's whole manifest was to suppress that information, so we didn't have to feel bad about pushing the Native Americans off their land. That they didn't know how to use it. We were going to do it better. They did not want information of earlier civilizations to come to light.
Well, what do they say? History is told by those that win the war, not by those who lost.
Thanks, Josh. Embrace the topic, definitely. Yeah, we still don't stick to one topic for very long. We try to.
Well, I mean, when you get it, it's the suppression of the bones and things like that. It's we're still kind of technically on topic. We're just kind of discussing different parts of that topic.
And I definitely think there's been a concerted effort to support to support that the Smithsonian is actively hiding these bones. They are actively trying to suppress this knowledge.
I 100% agree. I mean, when you start looking at, or maybe not looking at, specific events, but when you start looking at in total how the narrative changes from even not century to century, but just decade to decade of how the narrative of what the government wants you to think, wants you to feel, it changes from decade to decade. Think about how it was in the 80s versus the 90s, and then the 90s versus now. Is look at the commercials. I mean, they control what we see, what we hear, what we, they want to tell us what to think and how to feel. And it's whatever is best for the government at that time is how it's going to trend. And I think a lot of these items, like we talk about, the bones, and all that stuff, they take that stuff to control that narrative because they don't want people thinking for themselves. They don't want people thinking, oh, well, if this is real,
what else is real? What else have I been lied to about?
Well, that inspires people to start, and inspired people are usually not the kind of people that the government wants.
Exactly. Karen Polson says, I wonder if the Smithsonian is involved in other countries too. Well, look how many archaeological digs around the world are funded by the Smithsonian, and you just follow that train of thought.
Yeah.
What are they allowed to share publicly?
We're just going to leave this right here. You pick it up and you do with what you will. And like I said, and as Kay Bowers pointed out, sometimes it's not a conspiracy theory if the facts line up, and a lot of times the facts line up a little too much.
Yeah, and again, once you start down this rabbit hole, and you start seeing the little lines that connect all of this stuff, like the suppression of the giant bones, the number of them that have been found, the giants of Kandahar, the giants of Lovelock Cave, the giants of Malta. Any one of those, again, any one of those could be ignored or discredited, and people would be like, oh, okay, well, it was just a hoax story. But when you start connecting the dots to all of these, it is impossible to just go, well, okay, all of that was made up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like we talked about footprints for, Bigfoot and Sasquatch. If you look at the sheer number of footprints that are found all over let's just say all over the United States every year, and you think about how hard and how, I mean, it would have to be its own, you'd have to have this be a company that had employees that worked 24/7 just about to be able to keep this hoax going, if that's what it is. And I don't think people who want to sit there and say, oh, it's fake, it's a hoax, I don't think they really grasp that number of how hard it would be to, I mean, you not even counting worldwide. I mean, if you count worldwide, that'd be the biggest company in the world.
Yeah, there would be a 24/7 round the clock job just to keep that stuff in.
Pull something like that off, because we've talked about it before. Not only do you have to make the prosthetic, so to speak, to hoax this, you have to make it good enough to where it fools people like Dr. Meldrum and Grover Krantz and all those
guys with PhDs.
Guys with PhDs and what a foot's supposed to look like. Pete Chilcutt, all these people who, with the dermal ridges and all that stuff.
Hey,
So,
take
but
a look at this. That's in rock.
Oh yeah,
Look at a normal person's foot next to him. Holy
it's a big baby.
crap. And that's not the only time that giant footprints in stone have been found. Dad, thanks for sponsoring the channel, man. Appreciate it.
But like I said, let's say you can do all that.
Thank you, Roxanne.
And you can fake one good enough to fool all these people like the Meldrums and the Crances of the world.
Thank you, little Patty.
Doug Highchecks, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Just, like I said, you still have to put these things where people are going to be and where they're going to find them. And think about how many. Somebody must be at it again. There's just a lot of people rolling through.
Oh, Josh Jones gifted. I didn't see the notification. Josh, thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. But to get to do all that it would be an astronomical undertaking.
Thanks, Josh, buddy.
This is if things like this are fake or hoaxed. There's just no. So when you start looking at it in those terms, that's when it ceases to be feasible that it's a hoax.
Hold on, I'm trying to adjust my mic. It's kind of falling down on me. I need to get a new mic stand because this one isn't holding. I mean, I'll put it up where I want it, and then over like the next 2 or 3 minutes, it just
gradually starts drooping.
Yeah, I need to save up and buy a good one because this one was just a cheapie.
I think I've got at the at our studio. I think I've got another one of these like this one right here that we're not using. If I do when I go back up there, if I can find it, I'll send it to you.
Okay, appreciate it, man. Someone asked about how footprints got cast in stone. Usually, many years ago, they're cast in mud, and eventually that mud fossilizes, and that's how tracks like that are preserved. That's how we find dinosaur tracks. They were originally in mud that hardened, and then over to the eons became rock. But yeah, it does happen, and there's a lot of them that are found over the years, and it's amazing how many are found that look like just massive human footprints. I mean, you could just do a simple Google search and find dozens of them. Of course, some of them are obviously just, not legit. They're just AI art or stuff like that. But you look a lot of these and you're like, oh my God. It's impossible to just say that this didn't happen. Miss Lene's reminding us we're at the bottom of the hour. Well, how about we take a minute or so and talk about Scallywag?
Since I've already shown my boarding, let me get my little knife out.
Your S word.
My little S word. This would be.
That's the bounty.
I don't know if Doc could hold this one up or not.
That's funny.
It's a two-hander for me.
This is some more Doc speed.
Yeah, that's Doc's Claymore right there. Now, Scallywag Tactical is another one of our affiliate sponsors. Another veteran-owned, veteran-operated company. Craig and his boys do an amazing job. They've got just about any kind of blade that you could possibly want. Like DA said, this is the bounty, and it's a chopper. And you're not going to find any more comfortable knives to hold, any more. You could probably go out and find and buy a $300 knife or a $400 knife or whatever that is going to be a good knife. But for the money, anything you're going to buy for Scallywag Tactical is going to stand up and be just as good, if not better, than any of that stuff.
Pyromedic says that thing glows when the dogmen are around.
Maybe it do. It definitely can blind them if you get the right light. Lost my train of thought. Oh, go check them out. They've already partnered with Gray's Customs. And
now,
what was the other one?
Tooms, TOOMS, I believe it is.
Okay, so they
have two other knife companies they've partnered with.
Yeah, they're getting bigger and they're getting better.
New blades.
Yeah, so go check them out. Check out the blemish blade section. When you get to the checkout, after you've put you some blades in there, put in code DA Roberts 10 at checkout. Get yourself extra 10% off. Tell them we sent you. And that's all I got to say about that.
And remember, the discount is even good on the blemish blades. So check them out. Tell them we sent you, and I'm sure you will not be disappointed.
Nope, you will not. Great knives,
dude. We've like pulled the cap off of a bunch of potential cans of worms. We got the Masons building Washington D.C. We could do one just on the Smithsonian. I mean, we've opened some can of worms. The Tesla and that old boy, the Jules Verne. We could do shows on them. I mean, good Lord. Hey, Jeff, thank you, man. Appreciate that for the super chat.
Thanks,
It
Jeff.
was my pleasure, dude. I'll come back anytime.
Regular old knife says you. No, says I.
David, you were talking about the link for Scallywag. I can post the link here in the chat. So that should be popping up. Josh Jones says, DA, have you ever thought about doing kind of a documentary style videos on bigger topics like the Smithsonian? I think that's a pretty good idea. And as we continue to grow the channel, that's probably a direction we'll move into.
Well, yeah, we've talked about some documentary type stuff. Not that's a good idea, but we've talked about doing some documentary style stuff. But yeah, I think that'd definitely be a good one. That'd be one we'd have to be careful because they'd probably not like our.
Probably not. Let me pull something up. Give me just a second. Robbie, can you buy me a couple seconds here?
Yep. So, being as what DA has said about or has just talked about, what do y'all think would be a good topic for a show like that? Antarctica, Jules Verne, all his stuff. Like Josh said, maybe the Smithsonian type. I mean, any of those could be a documentary or, just a regular show. What do y'all think? What would y'all like to see? Since y'all's our constituency. Our constituents.
I found an image of what I was looking for, and I want to share this with you guys. This is something that I've had in my library for a while, and I've read this book 2 or 3 times, and I want to go back and do it again. I would love to say that this is mine, but it is not. Check this book out. You want to talk about something that's going to drag you down the rabbit hole, you will not be able to stop there. I mean, there are other books that go more into this, but the book is called The Suppressed History of America, The Murder of Meriwether Lewis, and the Mysterious Discoveries of the Lewis and Clark Expedition. You read that book, and it talks about stuff that was documented in the Lewis and Clark journals that we've never heard of, like the tribe they encountered in the Missouri River Valley, the tribe they encountered that spoke a variant of Celtic. Why would a Native American tribe speak Celtic?
Hmm.
But that's just a drop in the bucket. But you've got to read this book. I cannot recommend this book enough. It is a fantastic book, and it will drag you down a rabbit hole, and you won't look at a lot of places like this. And this it talks about the Smithsonian too. Yeah, you won't look at a lot of things again quite the same. Dave wants us to do a deep dive on the Smithsonian. Hey, I'm down for that.
Like you said, we've got a lot of topics that we could start doing shows on. Because I'd like to do a show on the Jules Verne thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's and I don't think we've done enough shows on Antarctica. That's one of my favorite topics. I love that.
Well, we still got the high res images. We can do another deep dive on the Pira Rice map in Antarctica.
Yep, and I would kind of like to do one on the Smithsonian too. But I think those are a lot of good.
Ooh, there's a good one. Wyatt Estes is do a deep dive on the Heavener runestone.
Yeah.
You know, I alluded to the Heavener runestone in my Ragnarok Rising book. That's why it was there. But yeah, I definitely do. I like to do a deep dive on the Heavener runestone.
Well, when me, you, and Noah had that show on the Oklahoma Bigfoot wars, I think that was the one we were talking when we first.
Yeah, it's not far from the Heavener runestone.
Yeah, and that's when the show we first discovered that you actually wrote the first Wild Hunt book right close to where that battle actually supposedly took place. So there's all kinds of connections.
Yeah, I think we've certainly twisted the lid off of a big can of worms, and God knows how many topics are going to come from this one topic. I didn't really realize how deep down into the rabbit hole we would go just talking about the Giants of Kandahar. I thought we would mostly focus on like the military stories and things like that. I didn't realize it would lead us to so many other topics, but it makes complete sense when you think about it.
I mean, once we really started breaking into it, though, it was kind of hard not to go down some of those rabbit holes because, I mean, that's just where it led you.
Right.
For us, rather. And I think, I mean, that's some good show topics.
I totally agree. And folks, you've got our email address here. You can email me at daroberts@daroberts.net, or you can reach Robbie. And what's yours?
rrainc8@gmail.com. I'll put it in the chat again.
If you've got an idea for a show or something you'd like to see us do a deep dive on, shoot us an email. If you've got one or both of us on Facebook, shoot us a message. I answer people all the time that send me messages. So if you've got an idea for a show you would like to see us do, shoot us a message or an email. We'll definitely look into it. I mean, these topics, they're really kind of endless. I mean, the more we look, the more questions we have. We end up we do find answers, but those answers only lead to more questions.
But I mean, sometimes those are the best questions that lead you to more questions than they do answers. Because,
and we didn't even touch on the Egyptian artifacts that were found in Grand Canyon. That's a show right there.
Yeah. Oh, the Grand Canyon itself, I think, is probably another whole just about the Grand Canyon.
I agree.
Because I mean, there's a lot of like thunderbirds and pterodactyls and all that kind of stuff that gets seen all around that area all the time. Or I guess they're probably both the same thing, but you know what I mean. There's a lot of weird stuff that goes on that most people just go, I'm not paying attention to that. But pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Exactly. Folks, I was on Old Line Cryptids last night. It was a great show. They've got a great little show there, and it's interesting and fun to check out. And I'm going to post the link there if you guys want to go check out the episode that I did last night. And make sure you give them a like and subscribe. They're at 173 subscribers, but they got some good content. So let's show them a little love and send some likes their direction. And don't forget to go over and share the love at Woodwalkers as well.
Yep, I saw Misty in the chat earlier tonight. I don't know.
House has been in the house for a little bit too.
I didn't see House come in. So if you're here, hey House. I guess the
Don
possum
says he watched it tonight. Thanks, Don. Hey, Greg, anytime, brother. You guys are family. Woo, Lordy. I don't think the air conditioner's working so great tonight. It's been hot all day, and I'm oh, got a super chat from Vic Kumar. Hey, man, thank you very much.
Thanks, Vic.
Appreciate you, man. He says there's many stories of giants in the Pacific Island nations. I've seen grave sites in Fiji of a man that would average 7 feet. The more you dig, the more you find giants all over the world. There's a reason that lore of giants exist in every civilization. They've all talked about them. They've all talked about dragons. So, that means that in recorded history, or at least the oral history, that these things encountered people.
There are stories about a flood, about giants, about dragons, about Bigfoots, about werewolves, dogman, whatever you want to call them. Cynocephali. Those 5 things, which are a lot of the 5 things we talk about, with the exception of the flood, we don't usually talk about that, but that's in there too. But 4 of those 5 things you can find stories about in every major civilization and culture around the world.
Good night, John Wayne. Enjoy Blood Eagle. And Anthony Coker, good night, buddy. You guys have a great night. Yeah. Thanks for being here. Greg House says he's making a late run to Waffle House. Ooh, that sounds pretty good.
Get them scattered, covered, smothered, and chunked.
That's right. I don't know if they come any other way. Sonia Morgan says 7 feet doesn't seem like a giant given my 21-year-old nephew is 6'8". 7 feet is at pushing the outside edge of what's in the normal range for humans. I mean, it's not uncommon to, especially if you look at the NBA, guys that are 7 foot plus. But when you start finding skeletons that are in the 36-foot range, that is not human. That is clearly not human.
Well,
looking to see if I missed any comments. Sorry.
Kind of like some of in the chat. It's kind of hard to wrap your mind around standing there and looking at a human or a human-looking thing.
Something that looks like us that obviously ain't us.
That's 36. I mean,
another thing that might attribute to the uncanny valley. Why we fear things that look almost like us.
Yeah. I mean that, but there again, like we said, the more questions or the more answers, the more questions.
Mm-hmm. Alejandro, I think his last name is Hernandez. Alejandro Hernandez says Spanish conquistadors wrote about tribes of very tall people in Mexico. The shortest man was 8 feet tall. The tribal chief was 11 feet. Yeah, that's again just another reference of races of giants here in the Americas. They've been mentioned in Europe. They've been mentioned in Africa. They've been mentioned in Australia. Yeah, every major civilization has references to giants in their history. Even if it's just oral history, it's still in their history. So, K Bauer says I was late the day they were handing out height, among other days. I always used to joke and say that I needed to file a class action lawsuit against the state of Missouri for building the ground too close to my ass.
Yep.
Vic Kumar says 7 feet 200 years ago is not normal, considering there are 30 to 40 graves on this particular island. Oh yeah, even 100 years ago, the average height for a human was only about 5'6", and it's only been the last 40, 50 years where we've been trending up. I mean, I think the average height for a Roman legionnaire was about 5'5".
Yep. Well, and you think, people talk about Vikings and how big they were. Really, the average height for a Viking was like 5'8".
Yeah, they were just bigger than the
Yeah.
average European at the time. Had Brown says my wife's 4'11". Mine's 5'2". I tell her she's the perfect height for me because I can walk up behind her and put my chin on top of her head without standing on my tiptoes. Vic Kumar says I encountered a monster snake last night on my run. He sent me a pic. Oh yeah, I'll definitely check that out. Sonia Morgan says, how tall is Gideon in your books? When I first introduced Gideon, he was in the second.
First introduced him?
Yeah, first introduced him. He showed up in the second Apex Predator.
Second Apex Predator, yeah.
Yeah, and I described him, I think it was a 5'6" with strange green eyes.
Yep.
So if you catch references of other characters having strange green eyes, not going to point anybody out, but maybe there's a connection.
Well, and, one of your main characters, a lot of people, when we talk about casting for him, Clark's not that tall. Clark's about 5'8", I think what he said in Lakeview.
I described him as built like a runner.
Well, he makes the comment in Lakeview, man, when him and they're first going in there, I'm 5'8", and I can't even get close to that. Talking about the stride.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he literally says I'm 5'8". So
we know how tall Daniel Clark is.
Yep. Because him and Conrad was talking about the stride length.
Mm-hmm.
I should know, seeing as how I've read that book. What? Probably.
I think you've read that one more than any of the others.
I have. I have read that book probably 30 or 40 times.
And now you've actually been to the area where it was written.
I have.
You've been to Joe Bald. I drove you through that intersection where he flipped his blazer.
Yep, he's like, right there's where he flipped the blazer. I'm like, go where? And where we saw, where we were driving, we saw that car parked, that sheriff's parked on the side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
We were going through there. You said that was where what was it? There was some other part. Because you remember where he was on the other side of the road,
mm-hmm.
parked at the bottom of that hill. But I can't remember it was right when we were going across that right before we went across that big bridge that you were pointing out where the Mark Twain was.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about, but I can't think of where that spot is. Now, otherwise, I'd know exactly what part you're talking about, but I'm just drawing a blank.
But the weirdest part was going up to where in Joe Ball, where the deputy got killed. Clark and Amanda went up and found it. You're like, yep, this spot right here. You're like,
yeah.
Right here.
I think it really makes the books kind of seem more real when you actually stood in the spots.
Yeah, and when you read them and you don't know anything about that, you obviously, and I've heard House talk about this, it's like playing a movie in your head, and you get in your mind what this place looks like, and it's cool to have that picture in your mind about what you think it looks like, and then you go see it and see how close or far off you were. I was pretty close because I was just, you did a good job describing it. I was pretty close, but that's the fun of it, is having that, having that movie go off in your head, basically.
Lakeview Man was one of my favorites to write. I loved writing that because it was really my first real big foray into writing about areas that I had currently gone through. Not first Apex Predator. That's where I grew up. I don't live in Lebanon anymore. I haven't lived there in 30 years. But I was writing about the area as I remembered it. But Lakeview Man, that was area that I still actively went to.
Yep. Well, I mean, but you took us through some parts that from the Ragnarok Rising series too. I mean, we were, I can't remember.
Drove by that waffle, that Golden Corral.
Yeah, and one of those part uses that's where the bus when they were coming down on the bus, the first time when they took the bus out and were coming back, you said right there's where they made that big hard turn and the bus about flipped over. It's just like, this is cool. So, yeah, it was which was also close to the area where the famous shot was talked about in Dark Frontiers too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and that really happened. Wild Bill Hickok killed Davis Tutt on the Springfield City Square at 75 yards with a single shot from a smoothbore Colt 1851. I would be hard pressed to do that with a modern rifled Glock. I could probably hit him, but I couldn't swear I'd hit him in the heart. But to draw a smooth bore 36 caliber cap and ball revolver and make a 75-yard shot, that is ungodly. I mean, the accuracy is just unbelievable. And that actually happened here in Springfield, Missouri, over a pocket watch.
Yep.
Wyatt, that's funny. Over here you have a happy little Bigfoot.
Yeah. Let's draw a happy little dog man right here.
Karen Polson says, I think why I love Lakeview Man is you can see how their paradigm has to change from what you thought you knew.
That's actually a pretty good, because if you look at the three main characters about, and when I say main character, I'm talking Conrad, Clark, and Amanda. Conrad's kind of I don't want to call him a skeptic, because he never outright said, when Clark finally does, it comes out, he never outright says, I don't believe in this, but you could tell he's kind of like, maybe, but, and then Amanda's just like, she fully supports him because of how she feels about him. And she never lets, Clark's like, okay, I saw this. That means he had that paradigm shift. It's like, okay, yeah. I got to deal with this.
Yeah, broke a spring in his brain. Like,
yeah. But then that night when they're in the backyard and the old guy gets snatched from behind the tree.
That scene is actually based on a similar scene that happened to some people I know. And, well, of course, there was no Gugway involved, but everything leading up to that pretty much actually happened.
Yep. Yeah, we talked about that the first time I came down there. I think you told me that story. But yeah, everybody's waiting for Gray Eagle to come back.
Well, I hope it doesn't disappoint. It's coming soon.
If what we talked about for 2.5 hours in your backyard, if that's what you're putting into play, it won't disappoint, because that's going to be epic.
Well, it's the ball is in motion. Let's just say I've reached a point in the writing where that ball is in motion.
Well, let me say that everybody out there who's waiting for Gray Eagle to come back, when you read this book, that's coming out. It's a different series. It is going to, I mean, think about how much Dark Frontiers blew your mind from going from the Wild Hunt and Apex Predator to Dark Frontiers. This is going to blow your mind even more going from Dark Frontiers to this. It was about 2 hours. We sat in your backyard and kind of storyboarded the best terminology for that.
Bounced ideas.
Yeah. It's going to be good.
I'm excited to get it finished. I've
Stuff is
kind
going
of
to
been behind the 8 ball on this one. I haven't been writing as much as I wanted to, but that's about to change. I've been dealing with a few issues, and hopefully the worst of those are behind me. But hopefully we've got that where I can put my full attention to it and kick it in the butt and get this one done.
Yeah, this stuff's about to happen. That is the best way to say it. This stuff is about to happen.
Josh Jones says, "What about the Crusader?" Oh, you mean Davidson from the Wild Hunt books? Yeah, Davidson's story is about to come out.
Yeah, we talked about that too.
Yeah, I think you guys will be genuinely surprised when you find out Davidson's backstory. Yeah, Karen, Heart of Iron. That book will bring Gray Eagle home. Don says top of the hour. We're not gonna do another one. We're about another commercial. We're just gonna start winding things down. Miss Lene already posted the info about Ken Brock, so check him out and let him know we sent you. Use discount code Cryptid10. But I've got to get up pretty early in the morning, so we're gonna start winding things down. And again, I want to mention the 22 a Day Foundation. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide, and that is 22 too many. We also take a huge toll on our first responders. So if you've got a friend or loved one or someone in your family, that has served in any capacity, be it in the military or as a first responder, whatever uniform they wore, reach out and check on them. Let them know you're thinking about them. Let them know they're cared about. Because sometimes the people that are fighting the hardest battles are the ones that show it the least. It's always good to let your veteran and first responders, friends and family know that you're thinking of them. Because you never know when that one text you send them might be what keeps them off the edge, at least for that day. Let them know that they're not fighting these battles alone. Don't let the hard days win. And just bear that in mind, folks, because a lot of folks going through a lot of heartache and turmoil over things they've experienced, things they've seen in the line of duty, and we owe them a debt we can never fully repay. So just keep all that in mind and support and love your veteran and first responder friends. But we've reached a part of the show where we're start closing things out, and something that we've been doing for a while, and I hope that I always will, is we've been ending the show with a toast. And the lyrics, it's part of the lyrics of an old Irish drinking song called The Parting Glass. And the song's played at the end of the night in Irish pubs all over the world about, closing the bar down and everybody going home. But if you listen to the lyrics and you listen to the tune, it's about more than that. It's about saying goodbye to the ones we've lost along the way. And it's about lifting a glass to those that can't be there to lift it back. So we're going to raise our glass. It doesn't matter what you're drinking. Get Kool-Aid, water. I've got water tonight. Or anything stronger along the way. Just raise your glass with us as we, raise a glass to those we've lost along the way, and express our debt of gratitude to the men and women in uniform that keep us free and keep us safe. But the quote says, "But since it fell into my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call. Good night and joy be to you all." Good night, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. Catch us again Wednesdays and Saturdays on DA Ex Machina. A special thanks to all our channel members and Patreon supporters. please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.